I've been reprogramming this. Oh yeah, that's us. So it'll be right underneath. I go to monitor screen. That brings us up. And then I have to remember to go to the chat because I always forget. And then I ignore people and then I feel bad. I have to do a little bit of like mousing around like to get things going. But because I can't see the chat window from where I'm sitting, so I have to add a monitor. It's like so ridiculous to make this show happen, but I'm going to be doing this for a while, I have a feeling, so I'm going to keep doing it, you know?
Yeah, you definitely should, man. It's a great idea.
It's fun. And I can pull the chat little window up over us. All right, so I'm going to roll the opening credits.
Okay, I'm going to mute.
Yeah, that's cool. Oh, no, I have us on. That's lovely. Well, here we go. You know, these things happen. What can you do? Okay. Here we go. All right. Hey, this is Jim Toscano, and welcome to another Filling in the Grooves live stream. But tonight, I have a special guest again. I have Calvin Bennett with me, who you just saw playing bass in that last clip. So I'm going to bring him in just a moment. But as usual, checking things. I armed one of the cameras while we were in the standby screen. So I apologize. What can you do? Things happen. I try to make them not happen, but they keep happening. It's like every week, you wonder, what is it going to be this time? You try your best and, you go for it. That's it. So I'm going to bring in Calvin Bennett, who's my special guest tonight. He is the bass player from Giant Flying Turtles, so we are bandmates. We're good friends. We're working on our third album right now, which is really, really exciting. And we're going to talk about the process in the studio, but we're also going to go back in the beginning of this band, from like the first record, the second record, how the band evolved, what it began as, and how it became what it is. So I'm going to bring in Calvin right now. Here is Calvin Bennett. Everybody say hello. Hello, Calvin.
Hello, everybody. Hope everybody's staying healthy and safe. And thanks, everybody, for tuning in. And thank you, Jim, for having me.
Yeah, absolutely, man. So, I've been kind of doing this sort of bass player, I guess, series, if you will, bringing in different bass players that I personally love playing with. And you're one of those guys. And, you and I have worked together for a while now, right? So I can't remember. I'm so bad with dates. So I'm really relying on you tonight to help me with the dates part. So when did we start working together? And then we'll go through the kind of the process of this band coming together. But when was that around that we started?
Well, a rough estimate would be probably around 2008 or 2010, right around there. And I may be a little off with that, but...
Okay. So, and you started working, so we're going to talk about all the bandmates, but you basically started working with Johnny, who is also a writer, a vocalist, piano player. He also plays multiple instruments, because in the beginning of the band, he was playing, you were both playing multiple instruments on stage, but it started out with the pair of you, right? Just the two of you.
Yeah, just to get started, we had played in some other bands, as I guess you want to call it, hired guns or session musicians and different sort of things, but sort of developed a relationship and a chemistry with the music outside of that. And then started, doing some small shows that I guess were sometimes acoustic and sometimes, electric, or a mix of both to get started. And then the next step was to try and start writing some music together.
Right.
And then, of course, you came in, and then going further down the road, then, of course, TJ comes in as well.
So let's step back for 1 second. So I met Johnny, who, and I'm planning on eventually, he doesn't know this yet, but he's watching, I think. Johnny's going to be asked to do this as well. But Johnny and I were playing in a metal band together. So like a progressive-ish metal kind of thing that we met in. And then the two of us kind of struck it up, basically from a musical standpoint, like, oh, wow, like we've got some other things we can explore. So, Johnny and I were sort of like, looking at each other like, we're going to do some things together, So that was kind of how we met. And then I guess in you guys forming that band, in the very beginning stages, I don't even think it was named yet, right? And then once you guys had formed some songs, that's when I was kind of asked to come on board, right? So.
Yeah, I think you're exactly right. So it sounds like we were coming together with him in sort of the same way, just playing in different bands, which I think probably happens to a lot of musicians.
Yeah, absolutely.
Certainly in New York City.
Yeah, for sure. And, before I get ahead of myself, I just want to mention a couple of things. So, Calvin, you're not originally from Brooklyn. Well, you live in Manhattan, or you live in Brooklyn?
Yeah, I do live in Brooklyn,
right.
And no, I'm originally from Kansas,
right?
But I've been in New York City since maybe 2004.
Right. So now, and you were playing in orchestras from like age 9. doing orchestras, strolling strings, concert bands, choirs, rock bands, you name it. Calvin's been doing all this different stuff, playing like bluegrass, Americana, folk, country, rockabilly, rock and roll, and doing all kinds of festivals, traveling internationally, for different gigs. Among them, right, Mexico, Ireland, Netherlands, Germany, Denmark, Czech Republic, Austria. So you've done a lot of really cool things, and you've settled in the New York City area, as you said, back in maybe 2004, right? And so I'm glad you found your way to all of us. So we feel fortunate about that. And talk about the orchestral thing, because you still play in orchestras, right? Or not during the pandemic, I suppose, but.
Yeah, I'm still doing I do a full orchestra. It's the Brooklyn Conservatory Community of Music. It's called BCCO, Brooklyn Conservatory Community Orchestra, and plus a chamber orchestra called the Brooklyn Brandenburgers. But both are on hold right now, although we did do a full orchestra, a video, a little snippet of the Dvorak New World Symphony, which was pretty cool. They put it together with Logic Pro, I believe.
Oh, wow.
And it worked well with everyone recording on their own.
Yeah.
To the section leader's track, and then we would record to that, and then they put it all together.
And then they mix it all together. That's really cool. Now, speak to how does the classical training and what you do as a classical musician lend itself to what we do as a not so common sounding band, I think. I mean, we do a lot of different styles, right? But how did the classical thing, how do you think that factors into what we do? Or what you do with us?
I think with Giant Flying Turtles, it factors in quite a bit, because I get to, you can hear it on, certainly on this new album, which no one has heard yet except for us, and we're still working on it. But on the second and first albums, you can hear the sort of these melodic runs, sometimes in triplets, like say Glitter, the the little sets of notes. So it gives, there's all these little runs that are, just based off of scales, but they sound cool in a rock band. And then the drums, everything that you do, which is very cool and offsets some of what TJ and Johnny and I are doing on the bass and the guitar and the piano. And it sort of becomes kind of like a rockestra, but
yeah.
But with more emphasis, like especially now on the drums. What's happening, like maybe the most important part of all these 12 new songs is what's happening with the drums and
right.
The bass and guitar and the piano, and of course the vocals are just the icing on the cake. But it all sort of builds into this little castle.
Okay, now before we get too far ahead, like into the new thing, let's take it back to the first record, because what's interesting with this band, and I'm definitely going to have you cite some parts, like play some parts, but like some of the first stuff that I heard with this band were more Americana, some country influence, some sort of swing and ragtime kind of influence, right? There was some really like diverse collection of tunes kind of in the very beginning, and we were a trio. So I wouldn't say a piano trio necessarily, because even though it became that, right, for a little while, but you guys would switch off. You would play bass or acoustic guitar, Johnny would play keyboards or guitar, and I would just play drums, and you guys were switching instruments. And so those tunes were really different. And I'm going to play, what's kind of funny is here, I'm just going to play the beginning of Daisy. And the reason I'm doing that is because that's one of the early things that I had heard. And I was like, oh my God, this is so crazy, because it sounds like sort of campy, swingy, perky stuff, right? And it's kind of it's real departure from what we do now, obviously, right? But here's a little bit of Daisy. I'm just going to play the tune a little bit, and then we're going to talk about that. Daisy's about a horse, right?
Yeah, well, you'll have to ask Johnny about that, but I believe so.
Now, that tune, right? So I'm playing train beat, right? You're playing. I'm playing that kind of thing. You're playing.
Uh, just kind of for parts of it, that's sort of standard kind of brassy
2-beat, right?
Rockabilly, yeah.
Yeah, and I would say that every time we would play somewhere, people would get up and dance, like without fail. People would get up and start dancing to that stuff, and it was super fun. And we made it, really the high energy live, right? And you're a high energy type of guy. People don't probably know that from this interview, but on stage, I have so many people come up to me and go, "I love to watch Calvin play. He's so much fun," because you're basically practically jumping around with your giant 5-string acoustic bass, upright bass, and you really do bring it live. And a lot of people say like, "Oh man, that band on record is good, but you got to see these guys play live." You hear that about a lot of bands. That definitely is a truth for this band because we bring a whole nother element, I think, in the live thing, and Johnny too, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, eventually when we get more live videos and are able to play, the gigs and the shows again, and of course the new album, we'll have a lot more of that and people can see that. It's like, I guess if you were, well, for me, I get really excited when I'm playing with musicians that I'm friends with, and everything just gets better when you're with your buddies and then you're playing music, and especially when it's all the music that you and your buddies wrote. And every
Right.
time you play it, it gets better. And of course, yeah, like there's no way I can't just jump around and I'm happy. And it's kind of like if you put on whatever band you might like, but if you put on an Iron Maiden record, here's what it sounds like, here's the record. But if you put on, the Live After Death video or Maiden England 88, you see, Steve Harris running around and mouthing the words and just what you're talking about, but obviously on a much larger scale for them. But I think even on a smaller scale for us, we get very excited about our music.
Yeah, completely. One thing just real quick before, because I tend to forget this, but I just want to bring in the chat window real quick just to check in. And I don't know if I'll be able to see it across the room, so I may have to cover up my face with the chat window, but I'm going to try Zoom with chat and see if I can actually see it. I cannot see it, but it looks like there's a bunch of things, so I'm going to cover up part of us for me to see the chat window because I need to see it. So, okay, cool. Steve Young is in there. What? Ross Amoroso's in there. Stephen B. Rock 23. Stephen Chamberlain, what's up? Canada's in the house. And Lucia's in the house. What's up, Lucia? I can't believe Steve Young is in there. How crazy is that? Awesome. So I just want to check in, make sure that I mention everybody. Scott Kettner, what's up, yo? Everybody check out Scott Kettner's show on Tuesday nights that I help to produce, and that's at 8 p.m. Eastern Time, and it's Brazilian drumming. Really, really interesting stuff. Lots of maracatu, bayonne, fajo, really cool stuff. Okay, so on this first record, let me go back to our screen here. So on this first record, I went to Daisy just because it's, I think, one of the furthest things from kind of where we've wound up, right? In a way. But I'm going to play one more track from that record because what's kind of funny is, and I think I'm going to hit Ravenhair for a second here, because these are like sort of things that drew me in the very beginning. Let's check out Ravenhair. Similar feel, right, to the other one. Afraid of saying something. Who wrote the lyrics on these two tunes that I played? First one, Daisy. Johnny wrote the lyrics.
Yeah, that's right.
Raven Hair.
I think Johnny wrote most of Raven Hair, but then it ended up being that we both wrote the lyrics because we started changing things around. But I'd have to go back and listen to it again myself. So hopefully I'm not putting out any misinformation here.
Yeah. Now, thematically, I mean, from a musical standpoint, we're in that sort of 2-beat thing on a few things in the very beginning, right? And I think we kind of were sort of known for that a little bit, right? Like people that were coming to see us on a regular basis were kind of digging that whole bouncy 2-beat kind of presentation that we had. But then in the middle of this whole thing, you guys had this. You're singing this one, right?
Yeah.
So now the early prog influence is starting to come in, right?
Yeah, and I think this is what you were talking about, sort of about the orchestra thing, because you can hear this is exactly what we were talking about, is having those little runs, just and just a song with all these I call them runs or whatever, but when you've got, you've got a great drum part there, and Johnny's got all kinds of, we both played guitars on this particular track because it was in the old days, but with the organ and everything, but it's kind of like a rockestra song, and then, with these crazy lyrics over the top as well.
Yeah, I mean, that, what's kind of fun is like, I'm sort of doing, so like, we have this sort of orchestral influence happening, then sort of my little fusion prog influences, right? And then to me, it's got almost some early King Crimson, early ELP things, in the organ playing that Johnny's doing, some of the themes. And then, we kind of took it out later on in this tune. It goes kind of even further out there. There's a little drum solo, I think, too. And so that tune, and also Brain Cloud, which is on this record, right? Both were the more out there kind of progressive kind of thing happening, right? So we did have this sort of two roads going on. We had, the stuff that was real swingy and kind of straight, and then this stuff that kind of veered into the prog thing, which I think was a continuing theme for us, right? That started to develop and kind of thicken the roots on the prog side a little bit more, especially on the new record, right?
Yeah, definitely. I think we've slowly moved. There's still elements of everything in the 12 new songs that will be on the new third record, but I think the way that the chemistry between yourself, myself, Johnny, and TJ now, and the way we're all four writing together, and the way that the music that the four of us have always been into our whole lives and that we grew up playing and listening to is now coming out more in these new 12 songs. Yeah. And so without even really trying, it just happened. But these 12 new songs, once they're finished, they will sound more like what the four of us, at least this side of us, what we're into, what we sound, what we really sound like.
Yeah, for sure. I was actually moving to the next record, but I hit that by accident. But so check it out. Now, here's the thing. So it was the three of us for a while doing essentially sort of piano trio kind of setup, right? And gigging and doing our thing. And we started talking about getting that fourth member, getting a guitar player. And I remember a couple guys, even, some guys that I know, coming down and sitting in with us to see what the chemistry would be like. And then we were doing a gig at Flagship Brewery in Staten Island, and TJ came down. And he sat in with the band, and he had learned a couple of tunes on his own and came in and sat in with us, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So just speak quick about, what you remember from that, or how did that come to be?
Well, that was, which brewery was that for Freshman?
I'm pretty sure it was at Flagship Brewery in Staten
Yeah.
Island.
Okay. Right.
That,
Flagship Brewery in Staten
yeah.
Island. Yeah. And that's as far as I can remember, that's the first gig that we did with TJ. But it was awesome because all of a sudden, you with your drums and Johnny and myself, we could sort of like relax a little bit. And TJ was just he's incredible,
Yeah, he's a great guitar player.
virtuosic musician, and just very friendly. It's very easy to just get along with him right away. And then we started like figuring out that like, wow, this is the quartet to like, I could see it's like soaring into the stratosphere. And we played a bunch of the songs that you've been talking about
Yeah.
At that gig, and the crowds there were incredible. Everybody was always really nice. And, hopefully we weren't too loud, but I know because we played Carnivorous Flower and probably a 15-minute version of Brain Cloud that
Yeah.
got more psychedelic. And
Let's speak about that for a second, because what's kind of interesting is the early days of this band, there was way more improvisation happening, I think, in the beginning, where we would kind of take the tunes sort of as a suggestion, and then we would explore kind of where is this going to go tonight, like especially Brain Cloud. That one, you guys kind of never knew what I was going to toss at you, because I kind of had the room to go, okay, we're going here now, and we might go double time, jazzy seven thing, or we'd go to slow, weird, kind of trashy thing, and we would take it into any direction and kind of improvise with that until we can kind of bring it back to where the head of the tune needed to be, right? And some nights that worked better than others, but that was kind of the journey, right? That was really fun to do. And we did a lot of that back then. And I know for that night that TJ came down the first time, we were still very much in that mode. I think now we really spend more time on arrangements, and we kind of orchestrate things a lot more carefully, but it's a different part of the evolution, right? So that process. But before we go, I just want to bring up the Waltz to the World record, because this is where I think we started to hear more of the change, right? Because there was more. Now, TJ came in sort of after a lot of these tunes were already recorded, if not all of them. Is that correct?
yeah, we were definitely in the process, but I don't remember exactly when, but
Because we did have versions with no guitar, and then when TJ came in, he went back and recorded on those tunes, right?
yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
And thank goodness too, because it just it added just a really great element, and then of course set us on course. I know I keep talking about this new album, but it set us on course for all the new material that would subsequently get written.
Right, right. And that's definitely where I'm headed with this. But I just wanted to hit a couple of the tunes from that record. By the way, so Waltz to the World, the title track, River Runs Dry, and One of a Kind are all in my book as drum play-alongs. And I did that because I wanted to utilize stuff that I wanted to feature and utilize stuff that I play on a regular basis. And I happen to really love those tunes. And One of a Kind is one of those ones with an intro that's very orchestral sort of influence, right? And,
Yep.
and I'm going to just play a little bit. I want you to play your part, but let me just play this for a second. And the cool thing is it goes from this, which in the book, this is an instrumental, by the way. So we're going from this pretty, triplet thing. And what were you playing on that? Let me ask something. Is that easier to play on an electric than on an upright bass, that part?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on how you have them set up, but this isn't this well. I mean, with the wide neck, with the extra string, it is a little tougher, but it's not too bad.
That's a
Uh,
5 string upright.
yes, that's correct. Yeah.
Is that
So bowing on this with a full rock band is a little bit tougher because of trying to hear everything, and
right?
but sometimes it works out really well, and sometimes it doesn't. But no, it's not too bad.
Gotcha.
Uh, if we had a real bass player, then it wouldn't be a problem at all.
Stop it. So that tune, One of a Kind, is really interesting, and it goes into sort of a heavy rock thing, and then it's got that thematic part that comes back later, and we go through kind of a little journey with that one, right? And I think we kind of would push the limits of that one too live, but this record also has some cool ballads on it. It's got some real swingy stuff. I happen to love, and we always seem to have waltzes, but Waltz to the World is not a waltz. Waltz to the World is, to me, it's a little bit like progressive-y pop. Like it reminds me of, I don't know, like the way Genesis would have progressive poppy stuff. You know what I mean? And that one's in the book, and then but then we have our good swingy things. And I was going to mention Stay Out Late because it's sort of a halftime shuffly thing. And you and I have a cool little part that we do up front, right, when it starts. Here's a little bit of that tune. So I'm doing this sort of halftime shuffle, but with the backbeat on 4, right? So like. So that was super fun for me just to get to utilize that kind of vibe. And you're kind of keeping that don't, right? Yeah.
Yeah, and also in some of the shows that we were doing, then that song would stretch out live as well with solos and I think a drum solo, and
Yeah,
then
yeah.
it would progress from there. But I think that could end up being like a 8 or 10 minute song as well.
Well, the cool thing about these tunes is that they all have a real spirit that lays in the jazz realm. So for the improvisational thing, where we state the head and then we solo over it, and it's kind of, I love that we have that sort of influence. We sort of have our Americana, our root stuff. We have our progressive influence for sure. Even at times metal influence, right, in some of this stuff. And then we have this jazz influence in this stuff, and sort of this, sort of old swingy kind of stuff too, right? I mean, we used to do "Keep My Dream Alive," which to me is like a old swing tune in a way, right? We almost had that like sing 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 kind of tom thing in it, and a lot of different influences is what I'm getting at. And so this record and the ballads, for me, the ballads, and I put one in the book, which is River Runs Dry, because I put it in a rock waltz section, because that's like a groove that I think drummers sometimes have to work on. And so I put that in there, but I think we have really powerful ballads. And so River Runs Dry is one of the really cool ones. And then I just wanted to ask you specifically about Hold the Flag, which, now, did you write that one?
Yeah, on Hold the Flag, Johnny wrote the music and I
Right.
wrote the lyrics to it.
Yeah.
And yeah, but you're right. Some of these we do. I think that the ballads or some of the softer songs, if we don't necessarily need to call them ballads, but the softer side shows once again a different side of the band. I know you were talking about all the different influences, but it might bring out a side of, say, some of the Pink Floyd with David Gilmour and Richard Wright singing beautifully together, or any number of 1950s, 1960s, 1970s
Right.
groups that have, maybe even a little bit of Beatles as well, but where you get to sort of drift or float on top with these kind of ethereal lyrics, I guess.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. I just wanted to hit that one just for a moment, hold the flag, just because it's so different. And actually, I remember bringing down like a marching bass drum and um, maybe either a marching snare or like a big tenor snare, and then overdubbing some stuff because we have this sort of, well, the story of the song, right, is about a soldier, right, or
Um,
potentially it could be, right,
it could be.
it could be, right. I mean, it conjures that up, is what I'm saying. So like,
Yep.
I'm just gonna play a little piece of it, and you're singing on this, right?
Yes, sir.
I like the real difference between both of your voices, and now TJ's voice too.
Peace and war, love and lies. When all our lives are drifting and hearts are trying to hide, all we see, all we show, they tell us what to think, the things that we should know. We could hold the flag until the lights go down. Death bombs flying over, young bodies dead on the ground.
So that's pretty heavy tune, but it's really pretty, and
Yeah.
it shows a lot of range, right? I mean, I think for the band, from the various things that I'm playing throughout the night, there's a pretty wide range of stuff that we go to, correct?
Correct. Yeah. And that's one thing that makes Giant Flying Turtles probably, I know there are a lot of other bands that have many, many, many different facets and different styles they play in. But if you pop in River Runs Dry or Hold the Flag or any of the number of soft tunes from any of the albums from Giant Flying Turtles into the middle of a gig or a show, it kind of offsets the real high flying, hard rocking, super fast thrash grass swing things. It fits not you can't play a whole set of the soft tunes, but one or two is kind of nice.
I like that you said thrash grass swing things because that's so accurate. This is what one person said. Is this the one? Oh no, this isn't the one. There was this one review where the guy said that he pictured us on a like a colorful painted bus, like roaming the countryside or something, right?
Yes, I remember. Yeah,
Um,
I remember
but
some of that.
in our bio, it says with a sound about as unique as their name, Giant Flying Turtles are carving a place for themselves in and beyond the thriving Brooklyn, New York indie music scene. Their genre-bending music has no bounds, inspired by rock, folk, jazz, bluegrass, and blues. High-energy jam quartet will blow you away. So like, that's pretty accurate. I mean, as far as genre bending, right? I mean, that's kind of something we're proud of. I don't think we do it on purpose. I think it's all the influences going into a gumbo, and that's what comes out, you know?
I think you're exactly right. It's just a natural happening for us, and I think it's really fun. And it's one of the things that I love most about music is sort of mixing everything together. And I might be guilty of being jack of all trades, master of none, but I love mixing all the music together, and I think it's just really fun.
Yeah, and it's what makes, things sound original, I guess. Let me just hit the Zoom chat thing because I just want to double check.
Mhm.
There's like a stream of things. I don't know if I can see them. It's making me a little nervous, but um, oh, cool. All right, so I am catching up. So, all right, cool. So it's going in that direction. Nice, nice. By the way, Ross Amoroso, always good to see you in here. Oh my God, Brian Yerkins, I miss Cooper. Cooper misses you too, man. My dog loves you. I have to say, my dog absolutely loves you, Brian Yerkins. So I had to cover up my face to see the chat, so it's covering me up in the thing. But you're in there. You look beautiful. Oh, that's funny. So Ross said, "Way Cool sounds like ELP or King Crimson." So he had the same opinion, or he heard what I said. I think he had the same opinion. Giant Flying Turtles records. Where can we find them? They're all on, definitely on iTunes. The both of the records, the first two. The third one is hopefully soon. We're working on it. We're working through this, trying to get people to sort of work remotely, and it's challenging. We actually tracked the rhythm tracks back in September, right? So it's been a little bit of it's been a little while. So Johnny and Michelle are in there, which is great. So Johnny Young and Michelle Young. Now Johnny Young is our also singer, writer, piano player, keyboardist, multi-instrumentalist, very talented dude that we're going to have in here very soon. But he was part 3 of this band in the very beginning, or Calvin and Johnny were part 1 and 2, and I was part 3. But yeah, so good to see you guys hanging out in here. I wonder if TJ will pop in. Maybe TJ will even pop in. That would be kind of cool, right? So I'm trying to lead up to the new record, but I wanted to make sure that we kind of hit on where we're coming from, which I think is kind of interesting as we get towards this. But one thing I want to bring up is banjo, and people would always be like, "Oh man, you guys are so stylistically, all over the map. There's so many different things." And then banjo is almost a straight up blues country tune, right? I mean, I'm going to play it real quick.
My banjo screams for a hydraulic life. Gonna have to check it out with my wife. It's better than the edge of a knife. My banjo screams for a hydraulic life. My banjo screams for a hydraulic life. Gonna have to check it out with my wife. It's better than the edge of a knife. My banjo screams for a hydraulic life. Bittersweet grin of grief. Went to Mexico to become a thief. Senorita says it's under the leaf. She's living under the sun. You got to believe. My banjo screams for a hydraulic line. Gonna have to check it out.
So it's like, I've just watched people's reactions. Then we go to that, and they're like, "What?" Like now it's like straight up, sort of country-ish kind of tune, right?
Yeah, I think so. And I think this came about just, probably in a couple of minutes, quite different than the other tunes, but just something that was maybe going to be more fun and a little more lighthearted
Right.
than some of the maybe heavier and darker songs.
Right, for sure. But I think that's what makes it fun is that it's, we go through this sort of journey, or if you will, it's kind of this little pathway that you keep visiting things along the way. I'm talking about one of our shows. You kind of go on this little journey, passing through different things. It doesn't from one tune to the other. You never know what you're going to get, kind of, right? So. And then this one comes out of sort of left field. Now, you wrote the lyrics for this?
Yeah, on banjo, yeah. The music was, I had originally come up with an early version of it with lyrics and music, and then when I brought it to the band, and you guys and Johnny changed the music around a little bit, made it just a touch more sophisticated, and then Johnny came up with his own lyrics to sing, which I think was more suited than, and it ended up being kind of like I said, a fun track that we didn't have to I don't think we take ourselves all that seriously, but
That's right.
we did not have to at all.
Yeah, so I really think that's a fun one to have in the repertoire because it just seems to come out of left field, but I love that tune. And I was going to play a little bit of Waltz, and then we're going to talk about the new stuff. And Waltz of the World is in the book, and it's a instrumental play-along, but I really like this tune. I love the chord changes in this, and I actually have, because I have an instrumental version of this, there were parts that TJ was doing that I didn't even really hear. Once they were isolated, I really knew what he was doing,
Yeah.
And it's just kind of cool when you take it apart and you kind of look at the individual parts, I'd love to be able to play all the stems from the record. I have to figure out getting that going for a live stream. But here's Waltz of the World. So this tune is way different than banjo, but this is one of the tunes that I remember in the studio, really paying attention to some of the details, especially between you and I, and talking about where that bass drum note goes. Let's double that with the bass, and we started really groove constructing this stuff a little more so even than ever before, I think. But I remember spending time on that with you, in particular with this, right? And we sort of came up with something that gelled really well for bass and drums, right?
Yeah, definitely. In the chorus of this, I remember you came up with the bass part the way it needed to sit just right. And I know that you came up with some things also in this upcoming third album as well, where the bass needs to sit, with the drums more so than what we had in rehearsal. Sometimes we don't figure it out, or you or the rest of the band doesn't hear it, or we don't hear it until the very last minute, but we can always go back in and fix things.
And I think that's the beauty of once you're in the studio, really listening to what the individual parts want from each other and how that's going to support the song. Because for the most part, with most of our tunes, we make decisions hopefully based on what is good for the song, right? So like that drum part is pretty minimalistic. I'm just playing. And that's really just framing out, right, what the vocal is and the piano part, but more so we're framing the vocal out. And that's the beauty of working in the studio together and kind of crafting songs, right? And not playing like, what would be a cool groove over this? It's more about like, how do I support the song, So that was definitely one that I felt really close to the bass part on, and I think we did a good job with that.
Yeah, hey, amen. So it's One of a Kind, River Run Dry, and Waltz to the World are all in your book, right?
Yeah.
That's a great little combination of songs. So
and I think for a drummer that's working on things, I think it lends itself to some moments that are great to practice with. But for sure, this record is leading us, on this journey towards where we're going now with the music and the studio process and the writing. Now, I will say that the first record, the songs were written and I came in last and plugged in drum parts. Then the second album, we were kind of working on it together, but we didn't go out and tour it or play it. We kind of like crafted the tunes, and then for the most part, we played some of them out, but then we kind of recorded. And then on the third record, we really kind of took the tunes out and played them in shows first. even though it's still in the rehearsal room, it still needed to go on its own path and putting them together. But the fact that we went out and played them, I think, brought a new thing to the third recording, which no one's heard yet, but we're going to talk about. And talk about that. Like, how did you feel about that third process?
I think you're exactly right. I would agree 110%. It's the best that we've done, and it brought in all four of us. And once again, it makes the music that the four of us, individually and collectively, very important, that we've been into our whole lives and are still into. It's coming out through the music, but since we're all four writing music and lyrics and arrangements and things, these new 12 songs are I think they far surpass. I love the first two albums, of course, but
Yeah.
I think these go a lot further, but I also think they go a lot more inward into each band member. I think
For sure.
it's actually more like, not to get too deep, but it's more like the soul, the essence of our musicianship is going to come out in these new 12 songs. Plus, they're they have very sophisticated arrangements, and as we were rehearsing and playing in gigs, then we would, you might say, oh, we need to do this, or maybe I would realize something waking up one morning and saying, this song has to start with the drums only, and then the band slowly comes in and joins the drums.
Right.
So
right.
I think this one had a chance to evolve a lot more. And, obviously we still have to finish the record, but we do have all the basic drum tracks as well as a few other things as well for all 12
Yeah,
songs.
and actually I don't know if this is going to work. I'm going to try this real quick, but I have a screen set up underneath our Zoom screen with my Logic window, and I just have a little snippet of a tune, but I was going to drop the needle in the middle of it somewhere. So let me just see if I can pull this off. And let's see. And it's kind of, this is going to be a little raw. There's no drums on this. All right, so this, right from the beginning, when the dam breaks, just a little tease. So, let me bring us on back. There's a theme at the beginning of that, which sounds very progressive, right? Very, almost orchestral, right? Play the bass line from the intro of that tune.
Yeah, and I believe that, just for the record, I think TJ came up with this part.
Yeah,
which
he did.
It just ends up, it really just, it sets up the song so well. But yeah, let's see. And then to the first
so it's
verse.
like, and from a drumming standpoint, it sounds real big. I wasn't gonna play over it because I couldn't tell if it was gonna be too loud. But the drum part follows the guitar basically and the bass exactly, right? And then we go right into a real sparse, open 12/8 thing. And then that tune goes on a big journey, right? And that's the one, I've actually made videos of me playing the groove in the middle thing, the instrumental part, right? Which is really interesting. But what's so great is that the main part of the tune is so nice. Before it goes on that whole journey, the verse and chorus thing, right? And it's very Pink Floydy. And I remember TJ actually suggested, like, don't put any snare on that second part, like in the chorus. And I'm actually playing a waltz tom-tom, like. Right? So that's like the second drum groove. It's going from ding into. So it's really wide open sounding, right?
Oh yeah, and the the journey, the musical journey part that ends up happening in that song and some of the other new tunes as well is almost like a whole nother piece. But there's the way that we've written them, they're so intertwined with the actual song, whether it has a couple of verses and some choruses and a bridge, but the instrumental journey section, they're so intertwined into the song that it's like having 2 or 3 songs almost in one.
Yeah. But what's so great is that it comes back to the theme of the song that we had in the top, like, and sort of classical music will do that, right? Theme and variation, and then restate the theme, right? So it kind of has that in the form. But that musical journey thing, Johnny and I are playing that interesting pulse, and then you're like, dun 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 dun, dun, right? That whole bowing thing, which is really interesting and reminds me very much of classical music. But so I'm sort of playing this kind of thing. And then Johnny and I are playing unison. Right, and then it goes into the that theme, all the hits that TJ and you are doing against that.
Yeah, or there's the before the part the.
Oh, right.
And then goes into the next parts and the bam, 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 bam. And it just.
Yeah, it goes on a really interesting journey. And then I wind up with this layered groove, and you and TJ are playing. I'm trying to remember, but right, that whole crazy thing, and it just goes on this real wild adventure. So it's really fun, and that's one tune I think where everybody kind of brought in and put their little stamp on it from like where we've come from influence wise, right? There's a cornucopia of things happening in that tune.
Yeah, I agree 110%. I think When the Dam Breaks is going to be one of the best tracks on the record. And it's definitely got a lot of the essence of all 4 of our like sort of musical soul. It's got a lot of us poured into it. And I can't wait until we get it finished.
Yeah. And we do have the softer side reflected at times, right? We do have some stuff that's really pretty. We have some stuff that's real grooving. We have a real hard hitting, funky rock, stuff too. So there's a lot of different things again coming from this band into an interesting collection, which I can't wait for us to get back to and record. So hopefully that will be sooner than later. I know that all my musician buddies are in a holding pattern, and it's probably the craziest time for musicians ever. But I tell people, I'm like, man, you have to just reinvent the way you do things right now. I'm doing sessions. I'm recording for people. I'm doing my live streaming. I'm doing teaching. I'm doing coaching. I'm doing business music coaching stuff. A lot of different things. And you sort of have to just embrace where we're at right now and just invent for yourself what you can do. You can't, let it just be poor me and then don't try. I tell everybody, like, just go for it, man. You just start streaming. Even if you do that, maybe you reach a few people and you just spark one person to go and try something,
Yeah, agreed. And you never know what might you will come up with in your mind, and some great ideas. Like you're saying, it's just you need to stay active and do as much as you can with the
Yeah.
music. And you've been adapting to all these different platforms and still doing all your music.
Yeah, I'm I mean, I feel very fortunate. Every day I wake up and I really do count my blessings because I'm very fortunate that I'm staying busy, but it's like I just try to influence as many people as possible just to do your thing, keep writing, playing music, do it because you love it, because this is why we do it. We absolutely love it. We don't have a choice. We can't not do it, right? I mean, it would be really impossible. So, like, do your thing every single day. Let's have a round of applause. Thank you. Thank you. That was beautiful. Um, so, Calvin, this has been fun, man. The time goes by so fast. I mean, I hope it went by fast for folks. I'm not sure if it did, but I'm going to poke into the chat real quick before we get wrapped up because it is exactly 8 o'clock. I do want to just check back on my little chat window just to make sure that I didn't forget anybody. And I do forget the chat. And I apologize. It's like I get into talking about this stuff or playing or doing examples, and then I completely forget what I'm doing. But I'm so glad you came in tonight, Calvin. This has been really, really fun for me, and hopefully fun for everybody. And hopefully I'm going to see you guys on Thursday night's live stream for the hand technique workshop. We'll be doing tons of hand technique exercises. So that's like my Thursday night thing every Thursday at 7. We'd be playing stuff together, right, and having fun. I actually had a couple people pop in from Twitch. Unbelievable. Anthony Casina, good seeing you, man. Yeah, so like really good to see everybody in here. Oh, you still have that. Johnny said he still has that recording. We were talking about, this was a few tunes ago. What happens is the chat is catching up to us, or I'm catching up to the chat. Sorry about that, Johnny. Sorry I didn't address that. But yeah, so really, really happy to see everybody in here tonight. Thank you for watching. Thank you for hanging out with me and Calvin Bennett, great bass player. And you'll hopefully see Giant Flying Turtles out there doing something pretty soon. We do have possibly something coming down the pipe on YouTube soon. So we're excited for that. We've got something in the oven, right?
Yes, indeed. Yeah, we're working on something. It might take a little while, but like you said, you got to adapt to the different platforms and just keep putting out the music.
Yeah, for sure. And definitely try to come back and see us again next Monday night. I actually have Roger Street Friedman in here, and we're going to be talking about the making of that record. And from the writer's perspective, I've been doing bass players every week, and now I'm going to be doing it from the writing perspective. And Roger is a singer-songwriter that you've been hearing me talk about with, because I had Matt Schneider on last week from that band. So it's so great to have Calvin in here, and hopefully I'll get Johnny in here, and maybe I'll get TJ in here. Maybe we'll get the whole Giant Flying Turtles in here. It would be amazing if we could play live, but that technology has not caught up to us yet. It has not happened yet, although there are some things, potential things, but yeah, it's just not there yet, but we'll see. So Calvin, thank you so much. I'm so glad you hung out with me tonight. And I will see everybody on the next one. I'm just going to roll the credits, and I'll see you guys real soon.